This morning, as Paul said, I want to share a few thoughts and a few things that I've learnt really over the past few years, the first few years of my career as a solicitor in a city law firm, but also some of the surprises and the challenges that I've encountered on the way, particularly in being able to fit music into my life, which is really a core part of my identity, something that I have always done and always envisaged doing, but actually something that can be pretty difficult to fit into a modern sort of high-flying city career. So taking a step back, when I was probably at about your stage, I was thinking about what to apply for as a degree to go to study at university, and honestly I had pretty much no idea what I wanted to do for my career. I'm sure some of you will be in the same position, although others of you might have a pretty good idea of what you want to do. But for me, there were just too many things that I was interested in and that I was good at, and that sort of people had said, why don't you consider this, why don't you consider that? So, you know, from thinking about becoming a musician, going to music college, becoming a doctor, as the title says, actually one of my earliest career ambitions when I was about 8 was to be a doctor in the mornings and a lawyer in the afternoons and a musician in the evenings. I came to realise that was probably a bit unrealistic, but sort of the kind of the core of that vision, if you like, I think has kind of really stayed with me, that I don't just want to do one thing in my life, in my career. And so I've really tried over the last few years to make it work for me. So when I was choosing my A-levels, at that point at least, the doctor thing had stuck, and I was intending to apply to university to study medicine. I went on a MedLink conference. I did some work experience in my local hospital, which I really enjoyed, and everything was going to plan, or so I thought, but probably in the summer after my AS levels, I kind of took a step back and I thought, is this really what I want to do? And I wasn't sure. And so I sort of started to rethink, and I probably went through a couple of different decisions before I finally settled on applying to Oxford to study physics and philosophy. Now, if you can not leave it as late as I did, that's probably a good thing, because I only made that decision probably 2 weeks before I had to actually apply to Oxford. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend sort of following me in that way. But I'm really glad that I made the decision I did, and I'm really glad that I didn't actually stick with medicine, because studying physics and philosophy at Oxford was probably one of the best things I've ever done. I found it so engaging, so challenging, and really I just studied it for the pure academic pleasure of learning. And that's all very well, but you know, good things come to an end. And towards the end of my degree, I had to think seriously about what I was going to do afterwards. What was I going to do to earn money, get a job? And at that point, I think there were 3 main options I considered. So firstly, I thought about staying in academia, doing a PhD, becoming a physicist. I decided not to do that at the time, although I sometimes have regrets, but that's for another day. The second thing I thought about was doing music. Now, a lot of my friends that I played in orchestras with at university did do that. They went after their degree to go and do postgraduate studies at music college, and a lot of them are now very successful professional musicians. But for me, I think the way I felt about music was that it was something that I could escape to, something that was separate from kind of the stress of everyday life and work. I really wanted to keep playing for pleasure rather than feeling like it was something I had to do to earn money or make a living. And so, although I never really wanted to stop playing music, I felt that it wasn't something I wanted to pursue as my main career. And so that led me on to law. I think being a solicitor had always been kind of in the back of my mind as a potential career choice, partly because my dad's a solicitor. We also had sort of some family friends who were solicitors, so I kind of knew what it entailed. I did some work experience, I enjoyed that, And sort of weighing up the factors, it looked like a secure, a clear career path. It made sense, rationally, to go down that route. So I applied and got a job as a trainee solicitor at Clifford Chance, as Paul said. Before I did that, because I didn't study law at university, I had to do a 1-year law conversion course, followed by the legal practice course. So I did 2 more years of studying, and then I started work as a trainee solicitor. And I hated it for the first few months. It was awful. I mean, I had no control over my time. I had no control over my life. The client always has to come first. So it meant that I could be asked to work late at a moment's notice. I couldn't commit to making plans with my friends. I had to give up playing in orchestra. And honestly, all this came as a bit of a surprise to me. I think I just thought that I would make it work somehow. And I was completely shocked by how difficult it was to maintain a life outside of work. And I don't think I'm sort of alone in that. I know, speaking to my peers at work, a lot of them have gone through pretty similar things. And I must say that sort of there were a few times when I thought about quitting, about changing career completely, doing something else. But I didn't. I stuck with it. And 5 years later, I've got to say I enjoy my job. I'm still a solicitor. I've moved firms to a slightly smaller law firm, Travers Smith, and I'm still settling in there, but I have great colleagues, I have lovely clients, and the work is really interesting. And as I'm becoming a bit more senior, I'm also getting a bit more control over my time. So the other thing that's really important is that now I do have time to play in several orchestras. I've just been in the semi-finals of Britain's Got Talent with the Collaborative Orchestra. I'm going to be playing in the Wilderness Festival this summer. If you ask me what I'm doing at the weekend, more often than not, the answer is I've got a rehearsal or I've got a concert. So I'm probably doing more music now than I ever did at university. So I suppose what's changed over the last 5 years, and I think there are probably 2 main reasons why I've sort of got to where I am now. The first is prioritization. I think it's possible to make something your priority outside of work in a career that's as demanding as being a solicitor can be. I think people do respect it when you say, actually, this is my priority, and they do work to try and help you realize that. So, for example, I'm able to come in early, to work late, maybe even work weekends, and I'm happy to do that if it means that I can get to my rehearsal. Obviously, that's not the decision everyone else might make, but for me, that works, and that's because I put my rehearsals, my music first outside of work. And the other thing, which I think is probably true of any career decision, is that when I was considering which area of law to specialize in, I really thought not just about the work itself, but also what it meant for my daily life. You know, what would the hours be like? How much flexibility do I have? Am I in control of my workload? And so I chose an area of law which is quite advisory. It's not transactional, so you don't get the huge kind of ups and downs when you're working all night to get a deal closed, and then the next day you can chill out. That doesn't really happen in my area of law, but it does mean that I have a lot more control over. I know that I can work late on a Monday, so I can get out early on a Tuesday. And I think, as I said, that's something that is really important in sort of all of our career decisions, and it's something it's easy to underestimate, sort of how important those kinds of decisions can be in the way that they affect our everyday lives. So, I mean, when you're thinking about what to do, you know, have you thought about what does it mean for your working life? What does it mean outside work? What are your hours going to be like? Do you have to work shifts? Do you have to travel? Do you have to work near a financial centre? Can you work abroad? Those kinds of questions are so important because they can really kind of make or break a career decision in terms of whether it works for you. So I'd really encourage you, sort of when you're thinking about whether it's university choices, whether it's things after that, to think about the broader picture as well as just the subject or the job. And I think the other thing I wanted to mention is that as a female solicitor in a city law firm, I find there are particular pressures on me, not least because law has traditionally been a male-dominated profession, and that has changed over the past few decades. I mean, for the last 20 years or so, actually, the majority of new entrants into law have been women. But at a partnership level, at a senior level, things haven't really changed as much as they should have done. And there's still a 30% gender pay disparity between women and men working as solicitors in law firms. And that really has to change. And law firms are more and more working to ensure that there is gender diversity and equality in the workplace. And part of that involves encouraging more women to think about becoming partners in law firms. And I know that that has meant actually I've sort of felt pressure to set that as one of my career goals, to become a partner, because that's sort of seen as, success. But actually I need to take a step back, and this is something that I've been struggling with recently. I need to take a step back and say, is that really what I want? Because is it compatible with continuing to do music at the level that I want to do it at? And the answer is maybe no. And so I need to be able to think about my own career goals, not necessarily those that sort of other people are trying to put on me. And I think, realizing that there is that external pressure is probably the first step, but it's also really hard, I think, when I'm so tempted to be a people pleaser, to compare myself to other people, that I really need to sort of fight that and make sure that I'm working towards my own career goals and not those that someone else has set for me. And I think probably that's the case, in all areas of life, and probably all careers as well, that it's important to make sure that you're following your own goals and not those that someone else has set for you. And I would say that, if you find that something isn't working out, like I did, it doesn't mean you have to stick with it. I mean, people have several changes of jobs or even careers through their lifetime, and I'd say that there's more opportunity to do it now than ever there has been before. So I think really, to sum up, be as prepared as you can when you're making career choices. Think as widely as you can when you're making career choices, and make the best decision you can with the information that you have. But regardless, there will be surprises along the way. There will be unexpected consequences. Some of them will be good, some of them you can live with, and some of them maybe mean that you need to make a change. But don't be afraid of doing that. And some of the sort of best decisions that I've made have come out of trying to work with the unexpected consequences of my career decisions. So I think, all that remains is for me to wish you the best of luck with your future, your career, your university decisions, and thank you very much.